There's a tendency in long-running anime and manga for them to have issues with consistency and forgetting their own pasts. The beginning of these series and the end of these series often feel completely different and not in a good way. Retconning and contradictions are usually bountiful. Berserk's Black Swordsman arc is affected greatly by this, and Naruto might be the chief example of how to betray your own theme. Isayama seems hell-bent to not have these holes in Attack on Titan. This was made most apparent to me in the most recent chapter of Attack on Titan, chapter 126, with the constant callbacks to long-dead characters. The ghosts of Erwin, Marco, Sanez, and Sasha all haunt many different characters in this chapter. I will explain individually why I think this is so great in a minute, but overall this creates a consistency in the narrative that most series beg for. It rewards the audience for paying attention and not forgetting about some of their beloved recently departed characters, but it also feeds into Erwin's thematically dense final speech in Shinganshina. Erwin states there that basically those who live give their dead comrades meaning. Winning in Shinganshina made every sacrifice worth it retroactively, because now every one of those scouts' deaths over the years led directly to defeating the Titan problem on Paradis. Ultimately, they all succeeded. Their lives were sacrificed to a winning, just cause. And that in a roundabout way is what's happening on an individual basis with each example I'm about to go through. A living character is giving meaning to the life of a dead character. Erwin, for example, who might be the most influential dead character in Attack on Titan, haunts three characters. Levi, because Levi has an outstanding promise he needs to keep to his dead commander. Hanji, who has to deal with following the commander who effectively ended the Titan threat. And Armin, who was chosen over Erwin to help humanity in its upcoming more important battles. Tied in all of these character motivations is Erwin, and more specifically Erwin's death, because that's what put each of them in this position. Erwin still being important long after his death shows not only the power of his character, but also shows that Isayama knows what he's doing. We cannot forget about Erwin because our characters cannot. Arwen specifically in chapter 126 utilizes a similar suicidal high-risk move to something that Erwin would have tried if he was in this situation with Connie, and Isayama depicts this parallel by showing a panel of Erwin, letting the audience know this is exactly what Armin was thinking, and ultimately Armin's plan succeeds. Armin constantly struggles with the pressure of having to surpass Erwin since he was chosen to survive over him by Levi, and Levi directly told Armin not to disappoint him. Armin, however, constantly brings up that he thinks Erwin should have been chosen to become the Colossal Titan over him, which is really just indicative of Armin's lack of confidence in himself that's been at the root of his character since the inception of the series. Ultimately, Armin will have to prove that the right decision was made by taking charge in the climax of the story coming up in the next few chapters, giving Erwin's life and decision meaning, as Erwin did to all of his fallen comrades with his suicidal charge in Shinganshina. Another big example from chapter 126 that I thought showed great narrative consistency particularly was Marco haunting Jean. After the plan is enacted and Jean is asked by Anya Capone to explain why he didn't just cozy up with the Jaegerists, Jean explains that he thought about it, burying his head in the sand, but he couldn't do it because the burnt bodies wouldn't forgive him, in a direct reference to Marco. That shows that Jean is still nearly entirely motivated and traumatized by Marco's death, something that happened well over 100 chapters ago. Again, to fulfill Erwin's decree in his speech, Jean is trying to retroactively give meaning to Marco's death. The burnt bones phrasing here is a direct reference to the moment Jean decided to join the Survey Corps back after Trost. Following the Battle of Trost, there were bodies everywhere in the streets, so the military gathered them all up and cremated them, and watching the bodies burn traumatized and motivated Jean forever moving forward. Again, he chooses to join the Scouts because of this moment, because far before Erwin gave that speech, John embodied his message. To John at that point, if they didn't stop the Titan threat, then Marco died for nothing. Then all the burnt bodies died for nothing. And now, even though the existential threat of the Titans is gone, Jean finds himself in a similar, more dangerous position and again finds himself motivated to do the right thing by the ghosts of the burnt bodies and by the ghost of Marco. Sasha is the most recently departed character to be haunting some of our contemporary characters. She was one of the 104th graduates, just like most of our main cast, so it makes sense that she is the freshest in our and the characters' minds. But she haunts primarily Niccolo and Connie, and I'm going to focus mostly on Connie here. Isayama repeatedly described Connie and Sasha as twins, and they were always together, so obviously it makes sense that Connie is dealing with Sasha's death the most, and he's the most upset. This has come through repeatedly since the Scouts got back from Liberio. On multiple occasions, Connie has been shown to get incredibly angry and snap on people, clearly mad at the world because of Sasha's death, and it wasn't until chapter 126 that he learnt to healthily deal with Sasha's death. After going nearly completely completely down the wrong path by feeding an innocent child to his mother for his own selfish gain, Connie, with the help of Armin, realizes that in the spirit of Sasha, he is going to help in the effort to stop Eren and save the world because it's the right thing to do. He comes to this realization all because of the haunting of Sasha's ghost. One of the more interesting examples of ghost haunting characters is Sanez, the military police officer from the Uprising arc, haunting Hanji. Now, Sanez isn't literally dead. To my knowledge, I guess he's still rotting somewhere in a cell, but in the narrative he's functionally dead. He will probably never be seen again, and his narrative function has been fulfilled. And that narrative function was to put a growing seed of doubt in Hanji's mind. Back in the Uprising arc, after Hanji and Levi had successfully outfoxed Sanez and his partner, Sanez has a final message for Hanji, warning her that very likely someday she'll be in the same position as him. Sanez believed what he was doing to be right. He was a soldier in a system supposedly designed to perpetually have the populace of Paradis live in blissful ignorance to protect them, but a new generation came along that valued freedom of thought in the people and overthrew his generation. Now the same thing seems to be happening to Hanji and her generation, and it looks like Sanez's warnings have come true. Hanji finds herself as the older generation now, with the younger generation with more ideas surrounding freedom pushing her out. It's a cycle, one that Hanji is self-aware of and scared of, because she never forgot Sanez's warning. There are other ghost haunting and other dead characters feeding the motivations of contemporary characters, but those are the examples from the most recent Attack on Titan chapter 126. Kasavier obviously motivates everything Zeke does, and Willy Tybur lingers over Magath always. But again, I love the consistency this shows. I love how this rewards the audience for remembering and caring about these characters, and I love that this all thematically feeds back into Erwin's final speech in Shiganshina about the living giving meaning to the dead by what they do with the opportunity given to them. Isayama is a great writer and doesn't forget anything. This has been your Patreon bonus video for February. Thank you for the support.